Raising the minimum wage is a rallying cry for Democrats across the country. A boost in base pay was a campaign promise of Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham as well. At the Capitol this year, there are a handful of proposals to raise that minimum wage from $7.50 an hour to $10, $12, or even $15 an hour over the course of the next few years. The $12 an hour proposal just passed the House of Representatives. It would not only raise the minimum wage, but it would do away with a part of state law that lets restaurant owners count tips as part of the wage for servers. New Mexico in Focus producer Matt Grubbs went out in Santa Fe this week to learn why the restaurant industry says it could dramatically change the experience for most of us when we go out to eat.
Explain to me the tip credit. What is that?
The tip credit basically means that the minimum wage is calculated using both the hourly wage the restaurant pays and the tips. So basically the restaurant owner gets credit for the tips that the worker earns towards the minimum wage.
Okay, and that is why servers, people who are tip dependent, make $2.13 an hour, $3 an hour. They can make down to that level.
Correct. So they are paid that much by the owner, but they of course make much more. And if for some reason they don't earn the minimum wage in tips plus the hourly, then the owner is responsible to cover the difference and always ensure that they always make the minimum wage.
Do you ever have to step in and do that and sort of make someone whole after their shift?
You know, in the 10 years that I've been doing this, we've never had to do that.
So the bill that's in front of the legislature
Yes.
would get rid of the tip credit.
Correct.
What does that look like for a restaurant owner?
What it does is it requires us to pay all of our tipped employees the minimum wage out of the sales of the restaurant. So what that would mean theoretically would increase our costs a lot, so that we would, if we were to stay with the tipping model, we would need to increase our costs by, in my case, about 25% of my labor costs.
Okay. And then on the menu, what would that look like?
Well, theoretically, it would look like a 10 to 15% price increase across the board.
Okay. I can envision folks saying, well, that's not too much to ensure that these people are making a great wage. What's the reality of that?
The reality is that the tipped employees are already the highest paid employees in the restaurant, sometimes making more than the managers. So the waiters, in reality, the waiters would be the folks that would be making the $2.50 an hour, that whatever that they would get paid, but they're taking home $15, $20, $25, sometimes $40 an hour in tips. So they're already the highest paid servers, employees in the restaurant. And really what they are is they're like commissioned employees. So they are compensated based on the sales that they make for the restaurant.
Okay. If you're paying a server $11.80 an hour, which in March is going to be the minimum wage here in town, if you're paying a server that, are they still getting tipped? What is that? You know,
Right.
what am I as a customer? What do I do when I look at my bill?
Well, that's the problem, is we don't know. I mean, I think every restaurant's going to respond to this differently. Some folks they've eliminated the tip credit in 7 states. And what you see that restaurants will put a service charge. So there'll be an automatic tip, if you will, on every ticket. Sometimes restaurants just get rid of servers and go to a more counter service or self-service model. And that's what you see more in the moderately priced restaurants.
Atrisco's more famous sister restaurant, Tomasitas, was founded by Georgia's mother, Georgia Marial. So Georgia, for you, it comes down to the experience that the customer is going to have in terms of the impact of what the minimum wage would be.
I think it will drastically change the model of the moderate restaurant. A lot of our patrons are senior citizens on a limited budget, families. They love the experience of coming in and dining in a restaurant and being served and having attention paid to them and all of their questions answered. This will go away.
Bartender Carlos Herrera has been working at Atrisco for 2 years. He gets paid a slightly higher wage than servers, but says he lives off his tips.
Well, my hourly is basically go to pay taxes and that's it. Okay. So I pretty much live on my tips.
What do you think happens if state law changes to require them to pay you $10, $11, $12 an hour?
Well, it's going to be a huge change for me. Like, right now I pay in my house my bills with the tips, But if that happens, I don't going to be able to do that because it's going to be way less than I'm getting now.
Yeah, so you're thinking people are they'll tip you less if their meal is costing more, if they know you're making more?
Exactly. I mean, not all the people, but percentage of that, they're not going to tip the same. They're used to tip $10. They're going to do $1 or $2.
What would you like to see coming out of the legislature in terms of a minimum wage bill?
Well, I would be opposed to a minimum wage that reaches $15 an hour here in New Mexico. I'm not opposed to a minimum wage increase. Here in Santa Fe, it's very expensive. The living wage is still reasonable. But you know, $15 an hour for any business up in Mora, they just can't afford to pay it. So you are going to see an elimination of jobs. I think that the bill as it stands is not that bad if it just didn't have this tip credit elimination in it. Raising the minimum wage is not a big problem.
The bill will set a firm wage floor for tipped workers, many of whom earn that lower wage of a little more than $2 an hour. Las Cruces Democrat Joanne Ferrari is one of the bill's sponsors. What do you anticipate the immediate impact of this as being?
Well, first of all, it's going to make sure that people who are working as tip workers see an increase in their tip wages for the minimum wage.
Okay.
And then also a gradual incremental increase in what that means as far as their guaranteed tip credit, as they call it. So it's going to mean that people are paying for not only their meals, but also for the tips that are for their great service that they're getting.
Do you expect folks to be tipping less, more, or will that cost get absorbed by the restaurant?
I'm not sure what's going to happen with that. We're hoping that people will still be tipping generously because that's how we value, the service that we get. But this way, we are making sure that tip wage earners and people who are working hard get that increase to a higher minimum wage. And we believe that hardworking families deserve to have higher minimum wages.
Ferrari points out that the city of Las Cruces has already boosted not just its minimum wage, but also the lower wage for tipped employees.
And Las Cruces has gone up to $10.10, and a portion of that has gone from the $2.13 incrementally up to, I think it's $4.60 as their base for their tips, a tip credit. And so, yes, we haven't seen any changes, or complaints from people that, we still are paying for them to receive the minimum wage, but then also tips on top of that. So, yes, this in Las Cruces, as well as other states such as California and Washington and Oregon, they've all made this transition, and it really does help support hardworking employees to receive the higher minimum wage.
Depending on the restaurant, a lot of those tips can come in cash. And when you have to do something like prove everyone is making the minimum wage or deduct payroll taxes, it can be a little bit tricky to track down. Ferrari's bill would take a lot of that gray area out of it. The Senate will decide if that's the right move.